Our murder case today focused not on details of the killings, but on debate over whether evidence discussed in the committal hearing should be made public. The magistrate has confirmed a ban on the release of any evidence within South Australia, but lawyers acting for media outlets have promised to challenge the ruling in the Supreme Court.
Within minutes of the judgment, lawyers representing the media announced they'd be taking their case to the Supreme Court. 13 television, radio and newspaper outlets have agreed to jointly challenge the blanket suppression order. Imposed this afternoon by Magistrate David Gurry, it covers the opening address by lead prosecutor Wendy Abraham, which for the first time outlined the police case, and the testimony of 3 pathologists who carried out post-mortems on the 10 victims. Even the reasons for the suppressions are suppressed, other than it was made to ensure the proper administration of justice. The order was made following repeated requests by defence teams in the hearing, which is being held to determine whether the 4 accused should stand trial over the killings. It comes a year and a half after 8 bodies were found in barrels in a disused bank vault at Snowtown and 2 more in the backyard of a house at Salisbury North. Lawyers representing both local and interstate media applied for the lifting of interim orders, which have prevented publication of any evidence since the hearing opened on Monday, arguing the justice system should be open. But in earlier submissions, defence lawyers said any publicity, particularly of some elements of the prosecution opening, could jeopardise any future trial. The appeal to have the suppressions lifted will be heard at 9 o'clock on Friday morning. Nick Cahoon for Nightline.
The case for a cut in interest rates early next year has been strengthened by new figures showing a marked slowdown in the Australian economy. The latest national accounts reveal that while the economy expanded slightly in the September quarter, the rate of growth is significantly down on earlier in the year.
The latest economic growth figures are not quite what the government was hoping for, but the Prime Minister insists the economy remains sound.
Pretty much in the groove, strong growth, 13 quarters of growth over 4%.
A slowdown in retail spending after the introduction of the GST and a weaker housing market dragged economic growth down to 0.6% in the September quarter, 4.2% for the year.
We're getting that slowdown. I don't think that'll be a bad thing.
Surging exports thanks to the lower Aussie dollar helped keep the economy growing at above the government's target.
The Australian economy continues the longest run of positive growth.
If you didn't have the low dollar and you didn't have the export growth, you wouldn't have had much contributing to economic growth at all.
But while the weaker than expected growth may hurt the jobs market, the slowdown may have a silver lining, with economists forecasting some good news for homeowners in the new year.
Australia eventually will get a cut in interest rates, but it may well be quite some way off.
Coinciding with the release of the figures came a new survey showing consumer confidence rose in December for the first time in 4 months. The Westpac Consumer Index defying predictions for the local economy in the new year.
Consumer sentiment has bounced back, so perhaps consumers are looking forward to cheaper toys under the new tax system at Christmas time.
The September quarter national accounts are the first growth figures reflecting the impact of the GST, and the Treasurer says they contain more evidence that prices have not risen as much as expected. Nigel Blunden reporting for Nightline.
Up to 160 illegal immigrants are feared drowned off Australia's north coast. It's feared 2 boatloads of people left Indonesia for Australia last week, but were hit by Cyclone Sam. A Japanese tanker has reportedly picked up 4 survivors. The Cruising Yacht Club has responded to yesterday's scathing coroner's report into the 1998 Sydney Hobart disaster. Among the changes, the CYC has replaced race director Phil Thompson.
Out on the water, conditions were perfect as the flotilla of yachts set sail for a warm-up race in the lead-up to this year's Sydney to Hobart, eager to distance themselves from the coroner's scathing criticism of organisers of the tragic 1998 event in which 6 sailors died.
I don't think it was too harsh. I think it's a pity that some people have got to be scapegoated.
At race headquarters, those in charge had no qualms about passing blame. The Cruising Yacht Club refused to speak publicly, but eventually announced via fax it had dumped race director Phil Thompson, who'd borne the brunt of the criticism. The club also claimed it's done as much as it can to improve race safety.
I think it's one of those hindsight issues where perhaps they could have had a closer look at it earlier.
The Weather Bureau was also quick to defend its role in the disastrous race It's already appointed a meteorologist to work with the race management team, which the coroner accused of being unable to even understand the weather warnings that were sent. Just to make sure there's no confusion, this year the Bureau will also issue new pocket-sized waterproof guides, giving basic definitions of the weather conditions used in race forecasts. With the race only 13 days away, the CYC says there's little more it can do. Flo Bitcon for Nightline.